Hi guys, and welcome to my July wrap-up. So this month was actually a really good reading month for me, and I read 9 books. So the first book that I read is called My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. So this book is set in the 80s, and that right there grabbed my attention. Everything about the 80s is just so cool for some reason. So this book is about 2 high school best friends, and their names are Abby and Gretchen, and one day our girl Gretchen gets possessed by a demon. Like, it's a true thing. So this book is basically about the other girl whose name is Abby, and she tries everything she can to save Gretchen from this demon. Obviously, based on the title, there is an exorcism that takes place, so be prepared for that. If you don't like body horror, you may not like this book, but other than that, this book was so interesting, and like I said, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read is called The Vines by Shelley Nolden. This book was literally crazy. So for 4 generations, there's been this family that have been doing human experiments on this woman against her will, and sadly, she's stuck on an island that she just cannot leave. Honestly, the book is pretty sad. I feel so bad for her, and based on the way that it ended, I definitely think there's gonna be a second book. So anyways, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I am on the lookout for the second book. So the next book that I read is called All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Brian Greenwood, and I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. So this book is the coming of age story about a young girl named Wavy. Sadly, both of her parents are drug addicts. The main point of this book is that Wavy falls in love with a grown man when she's only like 10 years old. Yes guys, you heard me right. This is the story of Wavy falling in love with a grown man, and we follow her from like the age of 5 all the way to the age of like 21, and her and this grown man are in love. So you know, be prepared for some very inappropriate things. This book will honestly have you questioning your morals. It was so good. So like I said, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is called A Dark and Secret Place by Jen Williams, and I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. This book follows a woman who finds out that her mother has committed suicide, and when she's cleaning out her childhood home, she comes across some letters written between her mother and a notorious serial killer. Basically, her world is turned upside down because she did not know that her mother had this whole little secret life of writing to this person. She also finds out that there is a new copycat killer who was killing his victims the same way as the person who her mother was writing in prison. So you know, that's like a really big coincidence. So basically, this book is just her trying to figure out how her mother knew this serial killer. She's trying to figure out if this new copycat killer was the killer all along and the wrong person was arrested. Honestly guys, the book wasn't terrible, but it was definitely my least favorite book of the month. And like I said, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read is called Little Creeping Things by Chelsea E. Chasso, and I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. Basically, there's this high school girl that is getting bullied by another high school girl, and the girl that has been bullying her suddenly ends up missing. Which, you know, if you're the person being bullied, that's probably not the worst thing to happen, except that last week the girl that was getting bullied took out a notebook and wrote out a plan on how she could murder her bully and get away with it. So not only does the bully disappear, but so does the notebook. So obviously she's freaking out, because obviously if someone finds this notebook, she looks very suspicious. In my opinion, this book was written for a younger audience, and I just did not vibe with the writing style, but like I said, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is called The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, and I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. So this book is set in the 1990s, and it's about a group of stay-at-home moms who are in a book club, and they read thriller and crime books. Like, how exciting is that? These women live in like the suburbs, they live in a nice neighborhood. When a new person moves in and kids start, you know, disappearing, acting weird, committing suicide, our main character believes that the new neighbor is somehow responsible. Based on the title of the book, I'm assuming you guys know what the book is about, and you know what she suspects that he is. Like I said, I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. The next book that I read is called Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica, and I also gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm just gonna come out and say it. This is the best psychological thriller that I have read in such a long time. This book is told through multiple different perspectives and through different timelines. So 11 years ago, a woman and her 6-year-old daughter, whose name is Delilah, they ended up missing. No one ever heard from the 6-year-old daughter ever again. Like, she just disappeared off the planet of the Earth. And now 11 years later, it's present day, and the little girl is finally resurfaced, except now she's obviously 17, and she's the only one that knows what happened all of those years ago. And she's the only one who can explain where she's been all of this time. Y'all, there are so many plot twists in here. Like, be prepared to go on a journey. It's so crazy, it's so wild. So like I said, this book was 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read is called Such a Quiet Place by Megan Miranda. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. So this book is set in a really small and close-knit neighborhood. A year ago, someone named Ruby, who lives in the neighborhood, she was accused and convicted of murdering 2 of the other neighbors. The only issue though is there is no proof that she did it, and she swears up and down that she's innocent. Anyways, now that we're in present day, she has been released from prison because obviously there was no evidence that she did it, so they kind of just had to let her out, and she moves back in to the same neighborhood. And because she swears up and down that she didn't murder them, that obviously means one of the other neighbors did it. So she is here to prove her name and try and figure out which one of the other neighbors did it. Like I said, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read this month is called Beneath Devil's Bridge by Laura Than White, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So in 1978, in a very small town, a 14-year-old girl was brutally raped and murdered. Her school guidance counselor admitted to raping and murdering her, so obviously he was arrested. So like I was saying, all of this happened in 1978, and now we're in present day. And there's this woman whose name is Trinity, and she has a true crime podcast, and she wants to interview the guidance counselor while he's in prison. So she goes there and she starts interviewing him, and he swears up and down that he did not rape or murder that girl. So the question is, was he lying all of those years ago, or is he lying now? Y'all, this book is so interesting. It took me on quite the ride. You're going to read this book and you're going to hate some people, you're going to be confused, you're going to have multiple different suspects in your mind. Like, you're just going to be all over the place. It was so wild. Like I said, I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Alright guys, so that was my July reading wrap up. I had a really good reading month, and apart from 2 of these books, I actually enjoyed everything that I read. So anyways, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys really soon with another video. Bye guys!